Thank you for the hearing, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make a few comments that express what I consider to be major concerns about rural America. We do not have good coverage in Vermont. And the assertion that both gentlemen are making is that this will be tremendous for rural America. I'd like to believe that's true, but I have an apprehension that it won't necessarily occur. You know, last February, Congress passed and the President signed some bipartisan legislation that I worked on with David Young, improving rural call quality. And it turned out that shortly after that bill became law, T-Mobile and Sprint, the FCC announced that T-Mobile agreed to pay $40 million in a fine for violating FCC rules with a practice of faking ringtones. I mean, this is a big deal for us in Vermont. Dakin Farms in the Christmas season depends on those calls. Camel's Hump School, it gets the word out that it's been canceled because of weather. And in the settlement, T-Mobile acknowledged it had injected false ringtones in hundreds of millions of calls. I mean, that's really upsetting to us. And I'm struggling to see how this past gives me confidence about the future. So, Mr. Legere, can you explain how T-Mobile did fail to abide by the basic call quality standards and not connecting hundreds of millions of calls in rural America, but very briefly, because we don't have much time?
Yeah, sorry, you know, the details associated with a settlement associated with that action are far more complex, and I'm not sure we could go into the process.
Well, maybe offline we could do that, because that's incredible. What is you're admitting to, T-Mobile admitted to, was that it actually had the system.
Yeah, there was
false ringtones.
No admission to a willingness participation in any kind of fraud.
That's, I mean, you and I both know that's sort of the deal, but it happened. And then this brings me to my point about wireless coverage, and I'm a little skeptical about the deployment promises in rural areas. Mr. Chairman, we've got a map of T-Mobile coverage in Vermont. It looks pretty good. It's pretty much the whole state. But the Burlington Free Press had somebody get in a car and travel the roads, the main roads, for 6,000 miles and take signal coverage over 6 weeks this fall. And as I mentioned, it was only on the main roads, and it was covering about 65% of the buildings in Vermont. And its results contradict many of what the assertions that are made by T-Mobile and Sprint. The data on T-Mobile and Sprint, T-Mobile covers 22% of the area tested in the state with 5 megabits per second or greater speed. T-Mobile has no service or spotty service in 62% of the areas. Sprint has no service or spotty service in 50% of the areas. And when I sit here and hear what I believe is your sincere goal to serve rural America and bring 5G to rural America, in a lot of Vermont, we have no G. And these maps don't correspond to what the Burlington Free Press found. So I'm a skeptic, all right? And I guess I'm going to ask both of you, Mr. Legere and Mr. Claure, when you use your maps, you're saying it's 96% coverage. These maps are bogus. I mean, they just don't work. So are you going to redo your mapping so that what we're talking about is apples and apples and not apples and oranges, briefly?
Thank you. I'll take the answer. Today, Sprint has a very limited coverage, and we rely mainly on AT&T and Verizon to be our roaming partners outside our core zone. So we're basically replicating what the maps of AT&T and Verizon.
Well, they're no good.
What's that?
These are no good. These are phony maps.
But the problem that we have today is a very serious problem. The two spectrum holders have been AT&T and Verizon, and they have failed to serve rural America. The commitment that we're making is to build a nationwide coverage, because we just got 600 megahertz just a couple of years ago, and we're going to deploy it as fast as we can.
Well, I mean, if you were sitting where I am and getting the calls I'm getting from Vermonters who have a map that says they've got fantastic service and they can't get a dial tone, you'd share my skepticism. This is a big deal.
Sir, your concerns are very real, and the commitments and the filings that we've made are about the network we'll create, and we have a strong commitment to cover rural America.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record these documents I referred to.
Without objection, so
I
ordered.
yield back.
And now, we